Today is Friday, June 16th, and we're going to go around the bases with our MLB insider at the New York Post. He is Jon Heyman. Jon, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing well, and we're going to start off with our top story here in the New York Mets. Obviously, it's not been a great run thus far. Last year was a great season for Billy Epler, but this year it's been a little bit of a struggle. And there's always been this thought of, before Billy Epler was hired, who are the Mets going to hire as the guy to run their team? Steve Cohen. Who's that first guy he was going to pick? And obviously they came to Billy Epler after a couple other candidates didn't work out. And one of those candidates they originally were thought to go after was David Stearns, who was with the Milwaukee Brewers at the time. What more can you say about David Stearns and his possible free agency in this offseason and how the Mets could be potentially looking at this guy?
Right. Well, you're kind to say a couple other candidates didn't work out. I think they tried about 10 different guys. Many of them were just very comfortable in their jobs. You know, David Forst in Oakland, Mike Chernoff in Cleveland, and others were comfortable and just didn't want to come to the Mets to be the top baseball guy for the Mets. The situation with David Stearns was a bit different. We don't know how he feels because he was under contract as a president of baseball operations with the Milwaukee Brewers, and the owner, as is his right, Mark Attanasio, declined, rebuffed, rejected, whatever you want to say, the Mets' efforts to interview Stearns. So Steve Cohen, the Mets owner, has never had the chance to interview Stearns to this point. And I saw Steve Cohen at the owners' meeting, texted with him, and he told me, I've never met the man. So, there are all these rumors around David Stearns coming to the Mets to run the Mets, but they're based on the projection or the belief that he would be the guy, and he probably was the guy that Steve Cohen had his eye on to begin with. And I think it's pretty reasonable. It's logical. He's a fit. He's a Harvard grad, grew up a Mets fan in Manhattan, I believe on the Upper West Side, and certainly has the experience now to run the Mets operation if Steve Cohen decides to do that. Obviously, Billy Epler is in place. He's got a multi-year deal. I don't see him going anywhere. He'd probably work under Stearns if this were to come to fruition. But, obviously we got a ways to go here. We'll see how the Mets do. Although I don't think that's the number one factor. I think it's really the ball's going to be in Stearns' court. What he wants to do. Is he going to possibly go somewhere else? There's a rumor of Boston. There are other teams that could be interested in him running the baseball operation. So the Mets are the logical one. He's a New Yorker, grew up a Mets fan. Steve Cohen can obviously outbid anybody. Mm-hmm. So I think it's speculation, but it's probably pretty good speculation. Not saying it's guaranteed or even likely at this point, but certainly there's a decent chance that David Stearns ends up running the Mets.
Now, when I remember that the Mets were searching for their GM and president to see who they were going to run their baseball operation, Steve Cohen, there was that rumor that he, like you said, he was looking at a person like David Stearns. But correct me if I'm wrong, the Milwaukee Brewers owner straight up shut that down and said he's not going anywhere. He's still under contract for this year, and then obviously in free agency coming up this offseason, correct?
Right. David Stearns is a free agent after the year. Right now, he's still consulting for Milwaukee. He is not operating as their president of baseball operations. Once he didn't take their extension offer, right. I think it became clear he wasn't long-term for the team. And so they just elevated his right-hand man, Matt Arnold, who was one of the others that was actually interviewed by the Mets. Did not end up with Matt Arnold, and Matt Arnold ended up staying, getting an extension with Milwaukee to be their top guy. But now, after this year, David Stearns will be a free agent, and Milwaukee won't have any say in what goes on, where he goes. But right now, he's still working for the Brewers and consulting with them. How often he does that, I don't know. I've heard conflicting things about that. I do think he is in some contact with the Brewers, but that ends this year.
So I think what's interesting about this situation is that obviously you already have, like you said, you don't think Billy Epler is going anywhere. He still has some couple of years left on his deal. Let's say the Mets do go ahead this offseason and bring in a guy like Stearns, and he's brought in as the president of baseball operations. Who's going to have that final say on trades, free agent signings, scouting decisions on draft picks? Is that going to fall under Stearns' umbrella? It's just he's going to have the say. And then I guess my question to this is, what does Billy Epler's role look like if a Stearns is brought in to run baseball operations?
Sure, if David Stearns is brought in, he will be running the operation and he will have final say, along with Steve Cohen. Certainly, the owner has a pretty good say as well. But Billy Epler, I presume, will stay on and retain the GM title, as many teams have general managers and then someone above them in the baseball operations department. Now, someone might say, well, it's really an assistant GM. You could say that, he'd still retain the title, but again, we're just speculating right
Right.
now because David Stearns is not a free agent yet. He hasn't decided which team he's going to work for. But I think it's decent speculation since he's a New Yorker, and we don't believe that Steve Cohen would be outbid on this situation.
Well, speaking of offseason and possible free agents that teams could be looking at, Shohei Ohtani. Going to be probably the biggest free agent sweepstakes we've ever seen in baseball history. I know that's going to be a little recency bias here, but you got to think about this type of player hitting the free agent market. His value could be at an all-time high as a free agent, and I'm sure there's going to be a ton of bidders out there for him, and I can imagine what that price is going to be for him. He's on a tear right now, but you spoke to Angels owner Artie Moreno about Shohei Ohtani and the pending free agency he has coming up this offseason. Obviously, there's that, looming over him. Are the Angels going to trade him to maximize their value in return in case they aren't able to re-sign him this offseason? How do you feel the situation is going to play out, John?
Yeah, I just don't see them trading him. I spoke to Artie Moreno, as you mentioned, a couple of days ago at the owners' meeting. He basically explained once again why he really doesn't have an appetite for trading this incredible two-way superstar. And if you're in his position, it'd be difficult to trade him. I understand you'd get a lot back, but it's a half year to go. If you're going to trade him, last year was really the year to do it, where you've got 2 years to go before he's a free agent. He is a free agent after the year. So, certainly would have a big value. The team acquiring him would have a little bit of a leg up in trying to sign him. But Artie Moreno wants to get in the playoffs. They have not been in the playoffs since Ohtani got there. Not Ohtani's fault, certainly. And they feel like they have a chance to retain him if they do make the playoffs for the first time. Others around baseball think their chances are slim. And in a way, when I talked to Mike Trout in this spring training, he said, we need to get in the playoffs to give ourselves a chance to keep him. It made it pretty clear that if they don't get in the playoffs, they feel they're not going to be able to keep him. Ohtani obviously wants to win. He's not all about the money. If he was about the money, he would have waited a couple of years and been a free agent years ago. But he wanted to come over here and prove that he's the best player in the world. He has now done that. Now he wants to win. So I don't think the Angels' chances are great, but you got to say this for Artie Moreno. Say what you want about him. He has signed a number of stars, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, Mike Trout was theirs to begin with, but they retained him twice with 2 big deals. They did sign Albert Pujols. They've signed, at the time he was a star, Josh Hamilton. At the time he was a star, Anthony Rendon.
Yeah.
There have been others, Justin Upton. Obviously, this is a guy on a whole another level, even above Trout, who's an all-time great. This Ohtani is one of the best pitchers in the game and one of the best hitters. Right now, you'd have a case that he's one of the top 5 pitchers in the game and one of the top 5 hitters. The way he's hitting right now, he's hitting better than anybody in baseball, and just incredible. So it'd be difficult if you're put yourself in his shoes. It'd be difficult to trade him and be the guy that traded him away. It would be a little bit easier if he signed somewhere else. Not that easy, particularly since everybody thinks that the Dodgers have a good chance to get him as a free agent.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point about Artie Moreno. He's not afraid to open his checkbook for these guys. He's going to spend the money. And
told me it's about the fans. And that I do think that there is a big element of that. He does want to please the fans. And of course, if you please the fans, you make more money too. So that's implied in that. But I think, I do like that aspect of his ownership. They do try hard and they do sign big players.
Yeah, I mean, you spoke about Ohtani and just the offense that he's already providing. I mean, he's hitting 450, 460-foot opposite field home runs consistently. It's insane the run that he's on right now. We've never seen anything like it before.
Right. I mean, he's on a 12-game hitting streak as we do this, and he's hitting 489, something like that, in that 12-game hitting streak with huge home runs in big games against the rival Rangers. So, I mean, right now he's the MVP. I think I jinxed Judge by saying he's clear of the MVP 2 or 3 weeks ago. Judge got hurt like within 1 or 2 days after that, and Ohtani went on a run. So right now, Ohtani is the favorite for MVP.
That's the perfect segue, John, to our next topic here. The Yankees offense without Aaron Judge because of a concrete wall at the Dodger Stadium. It has not been good for the Yankees offense. Looking at their stats coming into today, this Friday, they are 18th in the league in OPS, 28th in on-base percentage, 24th in batting average, 29th in doubles, and 24th in walks. This offense is not producing without Aaron Judge. I mean, that's obviously stats with Judge leading up to the year, but right now, but that's still altogether, they're not producing. The offense is not doing well with Giancarlo Stanton, Josh Donaldson, Anthony Rizzo, DJ LeMahieu. These are proven veterans. Obviously, you have a guy like Anthony Volpe. He's a rookie, batting ninth mostly in the year. You can't blame most of the struggles on the offense on him. But John, when you look at this roster and the way it was constructed, I don't think Brian Cashman and Hal Steinbrenner and Aaron Boone thought that this is the way this offense was going to perform, even if Aaron Judge was out for 2 IL stints now.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking. It really is to hear they're 28th in on-base percentage. And, since he's been gone, they've been near the bottom in every category. They're barely scoring any runs. They have won some games, scoring almost no runs because their pitching has been great. So let's give them credit there. Their pitching is in the top third in baseball. The bullpen, last I looked, was number 1 in baseball. So certainly right up there, if not number 1. The rotation has held its own, even with Severino just coming back a few starts ago without Rodon. But that lineup has been shockingly bad. Maybe we shouldn't be so shocked because if you remember the second half last year, Judge really carried them with a 1,300 OPS. The other guys really were not performing or were injured. Rizzo and Stanton get a pass. They were hurt a lot last year in the second half. But now, this year, without Judge, they have not done much at all. Rizzo got off to a great start. He's not been good lately. Stanton still isn't really doing what he usually does. LeMahieu has really been a deep slump. And, I talked about the owners' meeting. Hal Steinbrenner talked to the whole group at the owners' meeting, and he said, he's not his dad. He didn't come out and really name names and be tough about it, but he said our hitters have got to start hitting better, particularly our veterans. And, it was clear by the end of the conversation, he was talking about LeMahieu and Stanton and Rizzo. And he's right. Their offense has not been good. But like I said, pitching has been really good. Overall, I think the Yankees are doing okay.
Right.
And, once they get Judge back, they should be in good position.
Well, it's interesting too. You say that. I mean, you talk about this offense last year. You talked about Judge's MVP season. It was a historic season. In your time in covering baseball, when you're looking at teams, have you ever seen a lineup so reliant on one player to produce for the entire offense? I mean, I understand. Listen, there's guys who are getting paid a lot of money on that lineup too.
Yeah.
But they don't produce nearly as much as someone like an Aaron Judge has an impact. I mean, you talked about it. The numbers are there. It's proven. It's statistically there that the Yankees lineup is not as good when Aaron Judge is in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think offhand. I mean, maybe Barry Bonds, maybe Albert Pujols in his heyday, but just seems like they all go into a tailspin without him. They're not playing to form. I would think if they just hit as they can, as the back of their baseball cards say that they can, that offense, even without Judge, should be average or at least close to average in Major League Baseball. It's really shocking how they've fallen completely down without him.
Yeah, it really has. And speaking of disappointment, we're going to bring this all home. Your disappointing team of the week, John. Who is it?
Well, we won't spend too much time on this team because I don't think anybody really cares about them. We've hit the Cardinals and the Padres and the Mets and the Phillies before. Phillies are doing well now. I mean, it's got to be the Royals, right? I mean, they won one game out of the last 10, and now they have the worst record in baseball, worse than the A's, which seemed to be impossible. We thought the A's were going to beat the 62 Mets for most losses. Now the Royals look like a favorite to do that. By the way, let me pay a little tribute to the A's. The odds for a team to go 12-51 and then win their next 7 games. If you're already 12-51, what are the odds? What are the chances to win your next 7 games in a row as they have done? I won't even ask you to take a guess because it's impossible to guess this. To win 7 straight games. You want to take a guess?
Yeah, I kind of want to take a guess.
Go ahead.
I'm going to say
One in what? One in
One, I would say 1 in 50,000.
not bad. One in 113,000. Yeah, that was a good guess. That would basically be six in a row. So you're right on. I don't. Do you have a calculator there? Are you cheating? I don't know how you did that. So
I do a little bit of sports gambling. I know the odds a little bit.
all right. Well, that'd be six in a row would be about 56,000. So it's the odds
Man,
are they were winning 19% of the time. So if you the odds of winning when you've not 19% chance to win seven in a row is one in 113,000. So
they
I'm going
finished
to
that
give
winning
it
streak
tribute to the A's.
against the Rays too.
Yeah, I didn't even factor that in. They were playing some good competition as well to do it. So that would make we'll call it 120,000 now. Good point.
Yeah, you put it there. Obviously, there's not much to talk about the Royals, except real quick, trade deadline's approaching. The
Yeah.
Royals, they could be sellers, obviously. Are there a couple players we could be looking at that Royals team that could be trade targets?
Yeah, I mean they are going to be sellers. I don't think there's any question about that. I mean Sal Perez is the most interesting one. He's got 10-5 veto rights, so we don't see him going anywhere. That would be very, very exciting. Terrific catcher still, but he's a legacy player in Kansas City. I mean they've got Aroldis Chapman, they've got Barlow in the bullpen, so they've got two pieces. I mean the other teams in the Central are the ones that are really, really interesting though, because almost anybody could win except for Kansas City. The other 9 teams could all make a case that they can win, right? I mean, the Cardinals are in last right now, and they have the best run differential in their division. So, and they never sell. People are speculating about Goldschmidt and Arenado, but I mean, I think if they sell, they might sell Flaherty, Montgomery, O'Neill. Those are players that they could trade. But they never trade. As someone pointed out to me, even when we thought they were going to trade a couple of years ago, they acquired John Lester and Jay Happ, and then they ended up winning 17 games in a row and making the playoffs. So they do have the best run differential. They've been terrible. I would say more likely than not, they do not sell. But, there's a case to be made for sell or buy for a lot of these teams. I do think the Twins and the Brewers are not going to sell, but the other teams, including the Cubs and the Guardians, White Sox, they're all possibilities to sell. Now, I'm not saying likely, but possibilities.
Well, John, appreciate you as always for giving us all your insight and going around the bases, man. Take it easy, all right?
All right, Ryan, good talking to you.